chapter 41, verse 53 for Miketz. Vatechlana Sheva Shnei Asava, and the 7 years of the abundance that Joseph had predicted concluded. Asher Hayah B'Eretz Mitzrayim. These were in the land of Egypt, and so these 7 years of abundance concluded. Vatechilena Sheva Shnei Arav Avo, and the 7 years of famine began to come. Kasher Amar Yosef, just like Joseph had predicted. Vayira v'chol haratzos, there was a famine in all the land. Chol Eretz Mitzrayim hayah lachem, and in all of Egypt there was bread. Wow, beautiful, 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 beautiful. Goya. Wow, thank you, Avi. So in all of Egypt, there was lechem. Doesn't mean bread; it means food. These are the tahini blondies that are different. John and Avi baked. So then the verse states, "Vaterav kol eretz Mitzrayim," and there was a famine in all of Egypt. Vayitzak ha'am el paro lachem, and Pharaoh and the people cried out for Paro for bread. Vayomer Paro l'chol Mitzrayim, and Pharaoh said to all of Egypt, "V'chu al Yosef, asher yomar lachem ta'asu." Go to Joseph, whatever he says to them, whatever he says to you, you shall do. So let's look at the Rashi here. There was a famine in all the land. Shirkiva tuatam shatzru. The produce they had stored had rotted. Chutz mishal Joseph, except for Joseph's. Why did Joseph's not rot? Because, so basically the point is, that Joseph, the Midrash says, that the people had known against the famine, and they tried to store their crops. But Joseph had a technology that they didn't have. What was his technology? He put, you were going to say it, Mordechai?
Just storing food for future use. Right?
Yeah, but they also tried it, according to what the Midrash, what I'm saying is, Midrash said that the Egyptians also had a technology, but Joseph had a technology, because the Egyptians also stored it. What was the technology of Joseph? He took some of the earth from where it grew and he put it in there to keep it. Kind of like you put the pit in the avocado so it doesn't go brown, right? I don't know if that works. But the point is, Joseph had a technology, and he didn't share this technology with them. Why didn't he share the technology? The rabbinic approach is that Joseph saved all the Egyptians. But if he had a technology that could have prevented a famine, why wouldn't he share it? That's the type of question. Right? Professor Aaron Wildowski in his book doesn't use rabbinic literature as his sources. I don't believe so. He doesn't, because he's just doing a close reading of the literal text. But if he would use the rabbinic sources, it wouldn't necessarily rehabilitate Joseph, because Joseph had the technology. Why wouldn't he share it? And then Pharaoh says to Joseph, Pharaoh says to the people, go to Joseph, whatever he says to you, you shall do. Joseph said to them, that they should have themselves circumcised. When they came to Paro and they said, and he's telling us to circumcise, so he said to them, why didn't you store your grain? Didn't he tell you that the years of the famine are coming? So they said, no, Asafnu Arbe, we gathered a lot of Kiva, and it rotted. Whatever he says, you should do. So he says, whatever Joseph says, you have to do, because he's scaring. If he makes a decree against us, we're going to rot. So basically, this is the concept here. Hold on one second. Hold on.
According to the law in Parshat Bo, if I am your slave, then I have to circumcise. So he did exactly what it says in the Torah.
Meaning to say you have to circumcise your slaves.
Yeah. And so maybe he made it in a very roundabout way, but that's a good result, right?
I guess, yeah. I'm sorry, Ben.
We've seen the discussion of the circumcision here.
It's in this Rashi. It's not in the text. It's Rashi.
For which Rashi? For which verse?
For verse 55. Rashi says that that when they came to him, he told them to circumcise. This is also, but a little bit, so he's making them, Rabbi Yosef, the slaves of Pharaoh. It's very convenient for Pharaoh because Pharaoh is going, basically Joseph is going to enslave all the Egyptians for Pharaoh, and Pharaoh could say, I didn't say anything. Joseph said that what you had to say. It's a little bit of a unfortunate situation because the Jewish people have been used in this manner throughout our history as that so-called hatchet men for the kings to manipulate the situation. This is the uncharitable reading of Joseph, I'm sorry to say. And in fact, that's why it says that they were upset. This could justify, Joseph created the bureaucracy that would enable the Jewish people to be enslaved. That's a point that Waldowski makes in his book.
Considered a prophet?
Is Joseph considered a prophet? Is he
I'm
one of the
asking,
48?
I don't know.
Is he one of the 42 no, there was 48 male prophets. Is Joseph one of the 48 male prophets? So 48 male, 7 female. Okay. So verse 56 says, "Va'arav haya pnei kol haaretz," and the famine was over the whole land. Vayiftach Yosef et kol asher ba'hem, and Joseph opened all that they had within them. Vayishboru Mitzrayim, and he sold it to Egypt. Vayachazak harav b'eretz Mitzrayim, and the famine grew great in the land of Egypt. Okay, what does Rashi say? That the famine was great over the whole land. Rashi says, "Al pnei kol haaretz." I'll call Pnei Haaretz. Mi'ein Pnei Haaretz. Who are the face of the land? These are the wealthy people. Elu Ashirim. These are the rich. So all the people who were rich were now in a famine. And the famine grew great over them. As Kol Asher Bahem. Dai Bahon Ibura. They had within them produce. Vayishboru Mitzrayim. And they sold it to Egypt. Rashi says, Shever Lashon Mechar or Lashon Kinyon He. The term shever can mean sale and purchase. Okay, fine. And all the people. Okay, the next verse says, everybody came to Egypt, to Joseph, to get provisions because the famine was very great. She says, all the land came to Egypt to Joseph, Lishbor, to buy. Okay. That's what it means. They all came to Joseph to buy the land. Yaakov, and Jacob sees this, and this is another issue. So Joseph has reached such great heights. Why doesn't he reach out into his father? That's a whole underlying question. It's all underlying to this. Okay. So hold on 1 second. Okay, so now we're up to the next verse. Hold on 1 second. Okay, fine, perfect. Okay, so the next verse states as follows: Vayar Yaakov ki yeshever b'Mitzrayim, and Jacob saw that there was a grain in Egypt. Vayomer Yaakov levanav lama tisra'u, and Jacob says to his sons. Now here's the word titra'u. Now Rashi is translating this word as, why do you allow yourself to be seen? I'm wondering, how does Rabbi Steinsaltz translate that?
Why are you presenting yourselves?
Why are you presenting yourselves? So it's what does that mean? Why are you presenting yourself? What does that mean?
It says, do not display yourselves as exceptions to the general flight.
That's how Rashi reads it. Rashi reads it as, why are you making yourselves conspicuous? Meaning to say, let's see what Rashi says. Jacob saw that there was a famine in the land. How did he see? Isn't that true that he did not see? But he heard. He says, behold, I have heard. Mal vayar, what does it mean? And Jacob saw. He saw through a holy lens, Shadayin Yesh Lo Shever, b'Mitzrayim, v'hu hayta nevuah mamash, l'odio b'ferush, shezeh Yosef. He didn't see clearly. He had a partial vision that there was hope, but he couldn't see that it was Joseph. And he said to the brothers, why do you make yourselves conspicuous? Why do you display yourselves before Yishmael and Esav as though you're satisfied? At that moment, they still had the produce. So he said, you should pretend like you don't have, because otherwise they're going to be upset with you.
I sort of like the Sephariah, and it just says, why do you keep looking at one another?
So that's what
That seems like very simple, because that's like, why are you just standing around? Don't just stand there, do something.
That's exactly right. This is exactly right. That's I think a more of a pshat explanation, more literal than to say, it means you have, but just don't show everybody what you have. But the word titra'u there, right? Okay, very good. Okay, so now, all right. What does the verse say next? Vayomer, now Rashi offered another explanation. Rashi says, lama tisra'u, lama you are called mistaklin. Why should everyone look at you, umatmiim bachem, and be astonished? She'ein atem mevakshim lachem ochel, that you're not asking for food. B'terem she'yachal ma shebiadchem, while the food which you have has not yet been finished. Another explanation, Rashi says, it's an expression of being lean. Why should be made lean by hunger? So you see, the bottom line is, this is a very unusual expression, very unusual form. It's a very unusual form. That's the bottom line. Okay, the next verse. And Joseph's brothers went down, 10 of them, Lishbor bar Mitzrayim, to seek out food in Egypt. Rashi says, Shama. They went down there. Oh, this is on a different one. So actually, I skipped the verse. Yaakov says, I heard that there's food in Egypt. Redu Shama, go down there, v'shivru lanu misham, get some food from there, v'nichya v'lo namus, let's live and not die. Rashi says, Redu Shama, go down there, v'lo amar l'chu, it didn't say go. Remez l'masayim ve'eser shanim, shenis avdu b'mitzrayim k'minyan redu. The word redu hints to, there's a numerical value of 210, and then in the end of the day, the Jewish people were in Egypt for 210 years. That's figured out from the so it's 210 years. How do we know that? The Rashi elsewhere figures that out. Yes, Rabbi Yosef.
I don't know why Rashi is bothered by that verb. Avram yarad Mitzrayim. Yitzchak was told al tered Mitzrayim. So redu is the usual form for Egypt.
That's a good point. Rashi elsewhere explains to go down because the land of Israel is considered higher than all the other lands. So he could have given that explanation. Yeah, you're asking a good question. I think he just is citing the Midrash here. But you're right. It's a good question. It's a good question. Okay, Vayerdu Achei Yosef Asara. Okay, we read that. So the verse Rashi says, so 10 of them went down. What cost of Bnei Yaakov? Oh, so that's a very interesting point. Why are here they called the brothers of Joseph and not the sons of Jacob? Rashi says that they were regretting his sale. And so they had committed to act with him in brotherhood, and to ransom him. Any money that they would raise, or that his captors might set for them.
It's kind of setting the scene that he's going to be reunited with his brothers, so it emphasizes.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's so much, it's saying that the real tension here is not the sons of Jacob, but they're the brothers of Joseph who are coming down to meet him. That's a close reading of it. I agree with you that that's the way I would have read it, but Rashi's saying, and without really any evidence at all, this is the evidence. Rashi's saying that they're regretting it. We have not seen anything that they've actually regretted it. And sorry, Ben, I cut you off.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say the same. It says in the, again, this is the Rashi, that they regretted having sold him. But you could just as easily say, they want to say, oh, you're our brother, because they're being manipulative. It's not, it doesn't suggest the regret necessarily.
Yeah,
They're suddenly back to wanting to call him their brother, even though they treated him terribly, because now they need something from him.
yeah, I agree that it seems a little bit too charitable to the brothers, but later on they do regret it. There's no question. When they're in trouble and they realize they're in front of the guy who's has their fate in their hands and they've been exposed and he could tell their father and then they're gonna have egg on their face, then they really do regret it at that point.
So how many years have passed since then? I mean, it's been 7.
Well, so Joseph,
He says he's 30, I think.
well, so the point is, but we don't know exactly how old Joseph is at this point. At this point, we don't know.
It says 30 in the
Oh, it says he
right
was
before
30
and the page before on verse 46.
on which verse?
46.
Yeah, so Joseph was, yeah, but we don't know exactly.
Yeah, we don't know how much time passed.
Right, so.
Well, then it says 7 years passed after that.
Yeah, but we don't know if Joseph was in the middle of the 7 years when it happened, or, so it says the 7 years concluded. Joseph was 30. And we don't know how many years of famine there were at this point. So, okay, Jerry, you had a question.
Yes, Rashi seems to think that the brothers knew that that Joseph was still alive in some kind of a situation in Egypt. If that's the case, why didn't the brothers all these years send a messenger down to Egypt to redeem their brother Joseph that they sold into slavery?
No, they didn't know where he was. So they didn't know where he was. They knew where he wasn't. They didn't know where he had sold. So they said, if we find him on this trip, can you imagine what they were saying? If we find him on this trip, we're going to pay any price. That's what they were saying. If we find him, we'll pay any price.
But they
Yeah.
assumed he was still alive. That's my point.
The brothers assumed he was alive because they knew that he wasn't there when they went back to, they had sold him. Or they, at the very least, they saw he wasn't there, so they knew he was sold. Why would you kill a perfectly good, brilliant person like Joseph? He was brilliant, and he is. They had to have assumed that a man of Joseph's talents would have clearly risen to the top of the situation.
But they have to be a little apprehensive about seeing him, knowing that Joseph would, tell the story. You would be able to
Right.
give them up.
That's a fair point. It's a fair point. So then the verse states that there were 10 sons. Matam Omer. Why does it tell us there were 10? Ves Binyamin Achei Yosef. Doesn't it say, but Benjamin, the brother of Joseph, was Shalach? So why does it have to tell us that there were 10 when the next verse tells us Benjamin didn't go? Elinyana Achva. Hayu Chalukin Lasera. Shaloyas Avas Kulam Vesinas Kulam Shavelo. Avo Inyan Lishbor Bar Kulam Levachadhe. So Rashi's telling us something which is a little bit the opposite of what he just said. He said, with respect to unity, they were divided into 10. And that the love of all of them and the hatred of all of them toward Joseph was not equal. With respect to buying grain, they all had the same attitude. Wow. So they weren't all of one mind, which is not shocking. You can imagine there were probably 10 different opinions, but they all said they need the grain. All right, we'll just do 2 more psukim, then we'll go upstairs to Davin. The pasuk says, "Ves Binyamin Achi Yosef lo shalach Yaakov esachav." Benjamin, the brother of Joseph, Jacob did not send to his brothers. Ki amar pen yikra'enu ason. He didn't send Benjamin because he said, I'm worried that a tremendous tragedy could happen to him. Right? What does Rashi say? Pen yikra'enu ason, ubabayis lo yikra'enu ason. But at home, he wasn't worried about an accident at home. Okay, Amar Rabbi Elazar, he's saying, I don't want you going there, you could get hurt. He's saying you could get hurt even at home. Well, whoever says that, it's bad logic. Says Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, Mikan satan mikatreg b'shat sakana. When it's a time of danger, that's when the prosecutor raises his head and starts persecuting you. It's time of danger, don't go looking for trouble. Don't go looking for trouble at a time.
It's Satan. And that's in my,
Right, Satan.
Satan accuses a man at a time of danger.
Yeah, Satan in rabbinic literature is this prosecuting angel that goes up to heaven and starts trying to talk about your demerits. That's the rabbinic literature. Okay, we'll do one more verse, then we'll go upstairs to daven and light the Hanukkah candles, and then afterwards we'll come down. We have these tremendous donuts. Everybody has to eat 3 of them. They're so big, these donuts. These donuts are straight from Brooklyn via Woodmere. They had a pop-up store there, and the donuts, like, I will tell you one thing interesting. That picture from when we lifted the Torah in front of the White House?
Yeah.
That picture was amazing.
Yeah.
I asked the person to lift the Torah, but I didn't know his name. I'd never seen him before. I ran into him in the donut store. I didn't know his name.
Did you find it out?
Yeah, now I know his name.
Oh, fantastic.
He said he got into a lot of trouble for that because in his yeshiva, they didn't want the guys going to the rally. They said it's good for people who are not studying in yeshiva, but in yeshiva, we didn't study.
Right.
And then they saw him there. It's
Well,
like-
wasn't it like his back or something? Wasn't
Yeah, but he said, but there were a lot of pictures of him with the
Oh, I can't do anything right
yeah.
these days.
All right. So let's go upstairs to daven mincha and light the candles. If I could have some, hold on.